This is the Still Becoming podcast, and today we're going to be talking about the importance of wants and needs. It's actually surprisingly challenging to really get wants and needs met. And what this podcast is about is for men who've done a lot of work on themselves, journaling, gym, recovery work, therapy, but still feel stuck and like there's a piece missing. The goal of this discussion and series of podcasts that we're going to do is deep diving into topics that personally myself and PJ, I'm Ben and PJ is my co-host, are going to deep dive into and just share our raw experiences about going into some of this work. And today is about identifying wants and needs. And how do we look at wants and needs? PJ, are there any frameworks that we can use to look at those?
The big one that comes to mind is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I feel like most everyone has heard or seen variations of it. Um, and so basically it's like, the pyramid structure. So with the base being your physiological needs. And so those are just all the needs for, existing. So like food, water, breathing, shelter, clothing. And then the next level up gets to security and safety needs. And so that becomes financial security, health and wellness, maybe safety against accidents and injuries. And then the next level up is love and belonging. And that gets you into your friendships, your romantic attachments, family and social group, communities, maybe church, some things along those lines. The next level up is esteem needs, so appreciation and respect, perhaps recognition. And then he puts the top of the pyramid as self-actualization needs, and that's where like the personal growth comes in. And he states it, like maybe loosely described as the full use and exploitation of the talents, capabilities, and potentialities at this point. And basically, like what a man can be, he must be like when you get to the self-actualization part.
Yeah, totally. What's interesting about those, so there's five. There's the physiological, there's safety, and in order, physiological most important, then safety, love, belonging, esteem, and self-actualization. What's interesting is that the physiological is like it's basically on autopilot. Like you don't need to like think about, oh, am I hungry? It's like you feel hungry. Oh, do I need to sleep? You feel tired. And so that one's almost kind of taken care of. Then the other one's like safety, love and belonging, esteem, self-actualization. That's a little bit more relational relationships with people or relationships with ourselves and that sort of a thing. A question that I had, and I got some thoughts on this, but wanted to hear your take, is why wouldn't we get our needs met? Or what is it? Is there a point where it makes sense to deny our needs or to not get our needs met?
Yeah, I think so. Basically, yeah, we need those basic ones to survive. But then I feel like when you get into more of the other aspects, right, beyond the safety and physiological, I know for me personally, it becomes part of maybe a little bit of shame in having needs, or maybe there's a stigma of not being like the alpha male, right? To where it's like I think some of it might be those social identities that be misconstrued, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, you're a big strong man, you shouldn't have this. Well, it's like, no, that's those are traits of a healthy male. It's the difference is being able to actually communicate those in a healthy and effective and efficient manner versus like what happens when you don't. Some of it I think comes from there might be quite a bit of childhood trauma that were around where some people feel like they can't ask for their wants and needs, or maybe they just don't know what their wants and needs are.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, I think the point you mentioned around like shame, like I feel like a sense of guilt or shame around having needs because like oh I'm a man I should like be able to have all these things taken care of. Yeah, it's a weird conflict. If you want to be like a healthy man, you have to ask for things and you can't have it like all figured out. I think for men there's like a an idea that you have to be the one to have everything like under control and figured out and be like taken care of and like in a certain sense self-contained.
Hmm.
You don't need anyone. The whole individualism thing where it's like I don't need anyone. I can do everything myself. And that's like what a strong independent man looks like.
Yeah, and I definitely grew up with a lot of like the old school mentality and like the more the traditional. I think right now there's been a shift in that, and I think we talked about it when we were going through the No More Mr. Nice Guy book a few weeks ago. I grew up with traditional roles, right? The man takes care of that as a breadwinner, all that sort of stuff, and he takes care of the family. He's responsible for the safety and security of the family. He's supposed to provide, do all that sort of stuff. For him to have needs and wants outside of that, like, was kind of seen as weak, definitely.
Yeah, outside of kind of the make money, provide archetype. The next question is what are kind of the needs that maybe as men we like that we do need, but we kind of like stuff down or we do not advocate for either due to societal pressure or due to like internal shame or due to some other blockages. Like what do those kind of look like?
I think one of the main ones that I've noticed for me in particular is the need for belonging in a community. I've heard different things where it's like when you look at when men get into like relationships, sometimes their communities fall apart, right? Like they all of a sudden the relationship becomes the priority. Your friends become the significant others of the friends of your partner. You know what I mean? And so then you lose connection with all that. And I'm not saying that that's in all relationships or that it's like, oh, only this only happens in toxic relationships or this or that, but it tends to be what happens. So then, like, especially like if a relationship ends, then the guy's kind of left without a community. For me, I noticed having a community outside of a romantic relationship was really key and something that I was lacking in different parts of my life and different points. Like, when I was married and when I was in my previous relationship, most recently, like that was something that I didn't realize that I was missing.
What does that kind of look like for you today? Like what is like on a weekly or like routine basis? Like how do you get that? How have you changed from maybe entirely focused on the relationship to having that community aspect?
Counterintuitive, but you got to be a little bit selfish. You have to put yourself first. We've talked about this before, like the whole airline oxygen mask thing. Like, you're supposed to put the oxygen mask on yourself before you start helping others. If my life isn't good, if I'm not in a position where I'm either spiritually fit or mentally fit, then those around me are going to um, they're going to catch a lot of flack from my negative environment. If I'm in a shitty mood, sorry, if I'm in a crappy mood or whatever, then they're going to experience it, right? If I'm unstable mentally, right, and I have a lot of stuff swimming around and I'm not able to process and I can't be present, then I'm more likely to probably lash out at them. If I have that belonging in that community, which I make a priority now, one, you and I meeting, and then we do the book study on Sundays, and we have our other men's groups that we attend. When I don't make those a priority, my life changes. Even before I would skip for like a week or two on some of those other meetings, it was definitely noticeable. I have to make that a priority. I have to feel like I'm involved to be a better version of myself for others.
Yeah, that belonging in community is kind of challenging as an adult, right? Like when you're in school, you kind of have friends you hang out with and because you're forced to be in the same environment, like school and college and that sort of a thing. As an adult, it takes intention to like build that sort of community. I definitely get a lot out of the recovery, the AA fellowship is definitely a good place for that. Hanging out with people outside of, meetings. One thing that's strange for me is like I don't feel like prioritizing myself in that way. Like it almost feels selfish. Like you said, one of the things you kind of have to do is to be selfish a bit, right? And so to
Mhm.
me, sometimes I feel selfish where it's like, oh, I could be working or I could be doing these other more productive things. Belonging in community, that's just kind of like some wishy-washy stuff that I might not need. In reality, like the consequences of not having that are like I feel worse. And so I'm in like a worse mood. I don't get support. And one of the things of having a community is that you can actually talk about things that are challenging. That idea of like we have to figure out everything ourselves or we have to like be 100% responsible for like anything that happens in our life is all our problem and we have to be all over it. And we're the only ones who can be all over it when I mean, in reality, that's just insane, that like there's a reason like that we evolved as like a tribe, that's it's not a tribe of one. It's a tribe of many. And so I guess my question on that is how does getting support from your community like look like or like asking for help or like something happens that's like negative in your life or you're going through a hard time. How do you involve your group or community in that process?
What's funny is I'm looking at the notes and the question that you just asked, right? And I'm like, oh man, I feel like we contradicted ourselves here a little bit, like to where it's like, m- um, where we had a note about me being responsible for identifying them, and it's like, no, think that's where the community kind of helps as well, to where it's like maybe not identifying them, but maybe identify like recognizing that I have an unmet need or want. Like if you can identify that you have an unmet need or want and then start getting curious and starting to explore that, well, one, I have to put aside the shame and guilt associated with asking for help. That's a big thing for me, not having to be seen as someone who doesn't need help, right? So I have to be willing to be vulnerable and reach out to another man and be like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know what I want or need." And then you can start having that dialogue. Like, I don't know how many times you and I have had phone calls to where I wasn't sure, and then like you'd start asking me questions, I'd start asking you rebuttal questions, and then we finally would be like, "Oh, I think this is what this is." And it's like, oh, okay. And now that we've had that pinpointed, now we can start diving and asking different questions about it. For me, like I said, it's just setting aside that shame of being of or the feeling of weakness to being vulnerable enough to ask another man for help. And what's funny is I typically only experience that in my personal life, right? Which is weird. Like at work, where you would think that like I would want to, have this persona and all that. I have no problem like admitting that I don't know what I don't know and asking someone else. It's in my personal life where I feel like maybe at least for me, sometimes it seems like the stakes are higher there. I feel like the stakes are a little bit higher and that I feel more vulnerable asking. But for whatever reason at work, I don't have that same problem. It's just in my personal life.
Where do you think that shame and guilt came from for asking for help or assistance from people? Is that just something that's like always been around, or were there any experiences that you feel like led to that?
For me, I think there was a little bit of that stem from childhood. We were left alone quite a bit. So I think again, some of it might be like there's the shame, but then there's also the fear of trust, or like the not wanting to trust people and let them in. As a child, like we were latchkey kids, and which a lot of Gen Xers, I'm a Gen Xer, and like a lot of us were, but like my parents were alcoholics, and they were rarely ever around, to where we were taking cans and bottles to the grocery store to get the refunds in New York, because you get a nickel refund on cans, and we would go and get that to feed ourselves. So we were very resourceful that we had to take care of ourselves, and that when we did ask for help, we didn't receive it. So then that was reinforced that either I wasn't good enough to receive the help, or that I was foolish for asking, or that, I wasn't worth helping.
Yeah, that's a like terrible thing to experience like as a kid. I didn't have the same circumstances in my childhood. It was more of a situation where if I did ask for help or I like caused it was always viewed as like troublesome. Like I would cause trouble if I asked for help. And usually it would either be rejected or shot down, or it'd be like I would lose privileges or it would create some sort of fight or confrontation. And so I kind of learned that it was easier for me just not to ask for things because that way at least I could avoid a fight or confrontation or punishment or whatever. So I
Mhm.
just was like, the less that I say, the less that I kind of am a burden by having wants and needs, the less damage I will incur. So it's better for me just to try to figure these things out. And it sounds like in your situation, you weren't going to get help anyways. So why would you ask for help if you're not going to get help? So might as well just try to figure it out yourself.
Yeah. So what about you? So where do you feel you're at now with that? Like, what does asking for help look like for you? Or
It's a similar process of I feel like for me it's been ups and downs where I kind of it's one of those things where I know what I can do or what quote unquote need to do. And so what that looks like when I am doing it is being in touch with people about like what's going on, biting the bullet because I do have that fear of vulnerability of like not having everything together. So it's like if I am stuck or struggling on something, I feel stupid and like I should have this figured out. So there is that sense of guilt and shame. Basically, just having to put that to the side and just call and say like, hey, I'm dealing with this thing. And then another thing that kind of gets in the way of that sometimes is so either one, I don't share, like I don't say what's going on. That's usually what happens. And then if I do share, and I don't get the answer that I want or that I think that I want, then I'll get more upset. Well, now I just feel worse because I got an answer that I didn't want. Like I was vulnerable and I did all this. It was a big deal. And then I got an answer I didn't like, a double bind, putting myself in unnecessarily. I feel like it's just a repetition thing where I'll reach out more. I'll be more kind of willing to share when things aren't going well. And by doing that, I can kind of get more help. So it's like baby steps.
Repetition makes it easier to do. I know for me, I struggle to just make the initial phone call or be consistent with it. But the more consistent I am with reaching out to others, like it works out great when we do the Sunday morning group and we do the clearing and like that's an opportunity where we can do that and then all of a sudden I'm not a secret and people know and then maybe they know like I need to be better with like calling and just like hey this is what I'm going through like and just admitting that I need help.
I guess for me, back to control, right? Like I have a need to control things, and so I feel like if I'm doing it all myself, then I have some amount of control, even if I don't really have control. And so by involving someone else or asking for help or like sharing what's going on, I lose some amount of control, and that feels almost worse or more scary than the benefit of like actually getting help because now I've lost control in
Hmm.
my brain, and that going back to the Maslow thing, that's like a safety. It occurs as safety. That idea of like asking for help, sharing something where I'm like, I'm going through this situation, or there's this situation that's it's I'm not sure about. I don't have a solution, and so then sharing that occurs as like a threat to safety almost, which
Hmm.
isn't the case. I definitely think that that is like childhood script, the experience of that in childhood. The problem is like bringing that happened years ago, like 20 plus years ago, and then saying that that's I'm in the same position.
Yeah.
So that's really where things get screwed up because the game has changed now as like an adult with autonomy. You have so much more freedom. You have ability to like influence your life in a much more positive way, and you can take care of yourself and protect yourself in a way you couldn't as a kid. So it's like kind of updating the system to upgrade from like childhood operating system to adult operating system.
So we were talking earlier and it was about so all those coping mechanisms that we were just kind of talking about and some of it is those coping mechanisms like yes they protect you like when you're especially like in your youth and stuff like but then as an adult they become maladaptive
Yeah.
and they exceed their extended usefulness and then now it's like oh well like you said as an adult with autonomy like I can no longer behave this way. I
Yeah.
have to do things differently.
I guess one example that I have with that is as a kid, I would play a lot of video games to try to escape whatever I was going through because I didn't have much of a choice. I didn't have people in my life that I could talk to about things really. And so it was like either experience the pain of having unmet needs or just try to like not feel those needs by playing a ton of video games. It's one of those things where sometimes I go through these periods where I'll just play a ton of video games, like even in the present time, go through a challenging time instead of like remembering, hey, I do have people that I can talk to. I do have people that actually care about me, that are actually like safe people that aren't gonna like screw me over or take away all my shit or, take all my stuff away
Mhm.
uh, or lock me out of the house. That childhood operating system, it is stronger in a lot of ways. I mean, it obviously it has more time in the brain, right? And so
Mhm.
there's just the tracks are deeper, like the patterns are stronger. And so disrupting that is a real it can take a lot to kind of get out of it. Even if I have like all the tools in front of me, sometimes I'll see the tools and just like walk out the door and go back to the usual thing. What's been the most challenging part of moving to like asking for what you want and need today?
I still struggle with admitting that I have the needs still, particularly like where if I need emotional needs met, physical connection or anything like that. Like uh, intimacy tends to be looked at differently. Like I'm not talking like romantic intimacy per se. Like a lot of times, like whenever you mention intimacy, everybody always just thinks about, romantic intimacy and sexual relations, which is like I have trouble admitting like, hey, maybe I just need a hug. Maybe I just need some reassurance. Maybe I just need to be told that I'm okay as who I am because I often will not view myself as that, you know. I'm getting to a point like where it's like, and that's kind of growing into the esteem needs as well, is like working on that self-esteem rather than other esteem. Like that's where I need to have that constant growth because it's easy for me to try and seek that esteem from others. And I would much rather get that esteem from myself. And all that comes from doing the work on self-discovery and finding out like who I am, why, like what it is that I've experienced that has made me view life the way that I do, or like that has made me not want, like, feel like I can't ask for help, or, what did I used to do in these situations and how can I show up differently? Those are the things like with the esteem that I want to figure out. And some of it is I just have to push through that. And it's a tough ask, I think, for some people. It's something that I want to do. Before, I definitely didn't want to even look at that. I would put it on others to identify what my wants and needs were. Why can't you just communicate to me what you're feeling in this moment? Because it's scary.
Yeah.
That's just, you know, if if I'm vulnerable, you could leave me, and that'll trigger some, abandonment issues that I have, you know, or like the neglect issues to where it's like if I speak it and you don't do it, or if you don't provide it, or if you don't validate it, then that's the end of my world. And it's like, well, I'm the one that needs to validate it, not you.
As a kid, you can't really meet your own needs. Like you're entirely dependent, kind of carrying that over into adulthood. And I think I have the same thing. I want people to kind of do the heavy lifting for me and to say like, oh yeah, you're good. Like, we like you, we approve of you, those sorts of things. Because I find it difficult to do that for myself. I almost need to hear it from other people. But the other thing is that I won't believe it sometimes. Like people can say positive things, and then I'll be like, ah, nah, I'll easily dismiss it. That's an interesting want slash need of like I want approval and acceptance, and then also I won't believe it for myself, but I'll want it, but then I'll like deny it. And so it's like it's a weird push pull sort of a thing. I wanted to kind of touch on we've talked a little bit about the solutions, but what have been I guess the biggest changes that you've made based on how you used to do things but and versus what you're doing now with that like identifying what do you actually need? Like what's been the biggest breakthrough for you in figuring out what that looks like for you?
Unfortunately, it took ending a relationship for me to design, like, and to have my life kind of implode, to have me want to explore myself a bit more, right? I put a lot on my partner to do the heavy lifting for me, like we were just talking, where there was at one point where, she's like, "Do you just want a hug?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Why couldn't you just ask for that?" And it's like, because I didn't know that that's what I needed. Well, why didn't, and there's a lot of times where I would just, I don't know, I didn't want to know. That was the
Mhm.
biggest thing, is I didn't want to know what was going on. I didn't want to face myself. I didn't want to admit that maybe I was the problem. We get to a point, at least I do, where it's like I kind of just want to do the minimum to get that kind of comfort level. And once I got that, then I could just ride it out. And if it dips, then, like just, oh, let me just do just a little bit more to kind of raise it back up to where I have that, and to where it's just where the boat's not rocking, right? Not that like anything's improving. It's just that like, oh, well, we're still like I could change my heading, and get out of the rough waters. But it's like, no, I'm just going to stabilize the boat for the period because I know how to do that, right? Like I can manage this little bit of shit, stay on course. But it's like, oh, it'd be much easier if I veered out, did that, and went around, I want to be more curious about what's going on, and I can either heal from it or let it go, one of the two or both, and well, then I can maybe not have that same experience the next time. What it took, was losing just about everything. And now, like, how I go about life is a lot different, like before, like the podcasts that I choose to listen to, like, I mean, even what I used to choose to listen to, like before, I was like, oh, I'm just going to listen to sports radio. I'm just going to, disassociate and not deal with anything and just keep status quo, but now it's like, oh, all right, well, now I want to explore this stuff. So I'm, reading different books, listening to different podcasts, having different discussions, that I was never never willing to have before. I just didn't care. When you kind of get awoken, awakened, whatever, I feel like whatever, um, you lose that blissful ignorance that like you were fine with before, and now it's like, well, shit, now I got to face this.
The whole foundation collapsed basically. What happens now?
And then some of it is being around different people, right? Like making new friends who are into those sorts of things, right? Like, yeah, I was like, oh, hey, we're gonna go party, we're gonna go to this game, we're gonna do this. And then now, like, the stuff that you're into, the stuff that Bob's into is like, oh, all right, well, maybe I should change what I'm into. It's like, if I want to have a different life, I need to have good, different friends, right? Or at least, friends that are of a similar mindset or on the same path.
Like going through an extreme amount of pain and turmoil. This obviously isn't working. And then what do I do from here?
Yeah.
Because a fork in the road, right? Like I could keep on doing this thing that's not working, or I could try to do something I've never done before.
And I've done some of this stuff in the past, but I've never done it with intention. Met with therapists before, but it was to try and appease someone,
Mm.
right? I read a book because, all right, well, this will make this person happy. Did I really want to learn from it? No. And then now all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe I'll reread that book because it's probably good. Then there was other times where it's like, I would do it because I wanted to, but then I wouldn't put anything into practice. I'm not only getting curious and I'm seeking different things, but I'm actually trying to put those things into practice as well.
Going through the motions to look good on paper. It's like, oh, people say I need this stuff. It seem like I'm doing work, and to it's almost like a self-deception too, because then I can tell myself, well, I am doing therapy, I'm doing these things. Having one foot out the door, kind of a deal is how I would approach it, and be like, yeah, well, I'll do therapy, but I'm not actually going to say what's going on, or not actually going to be honest.
What was it that changed for you?
I guess also the people I was talking to, I used to have worse therapists for sure, so I've upgraded therapists. Just realizing that what I was doing wasn't working. And I mean that's a spectrum, right? Like
Hmm.
throughout the whole situation it never worked, but there I guess it gets more painful at a certain point. And a relapse in 2024 with weed, and that kind of was an experience for me because I wasn't being honest with myself. I wasn't being honest with other people. And so going through that process of admitting that I was not honest with myself and others gave me a different perspective on things, and it kind of got me more plugged into doing the work that I need to do. Even though I knew for a long time that it's blaming other people is fucking pointless. Like there's no point in blaming other people for my situation. I always had like that a holdout where I was like, well, it's the other people that are screwing me up. Other people in my life, maybe my parents, maybe other. I'd always have that last holdout of like it's them, not me. And then I realized last year is like, oh, it is me. And it's always been me. Not as a kid. That's the weird distinction is like as a kid it's not you. And that's the weird unlearning. And I feel like that's kind of the process needed to go from like kid mindset to adult mindset is like, yeah, I have to like grieve and process the fact that yeah, I had like some crappy things happen as a kid and it wasn't my fault. And other people may have caused that then, and I had no part in that. And now as an adult, it's like I'm responsible for the fact that that's still occurring, and then I'm using child decision making in my adult life, and it's screwing things up. And then I'm using child decision making to like blame other people and say like, oh well, you didn't meet my needs for me, so it's your fault, and you didn't like read my mind. And that's the paradox, right? Is like taking ownership but not being isolated or like completely self-contained. It's
Hmm.
like taking ownership for saying I need help and I can't figure it out. Like that's taking ownership, not necessarily saying I'm gonna figure it out all myself because I'm the only one I can depend on. So it's just gonna be me. So
Yeah.
there's like that distinction there of taking ownership versus like toxic individualism, maybe of just thinking like I'll just do everything myself. Because that's also how I kind of thought is like, yeah, I'll do these things, I'll do some recovery or whatever, but it's always gonna be me, and I'm the only one who can solve these things. So learning to rely on other people who are trustworthy,
Yeah.
kind of the solution. Like, how do you move into getting your wants and needs met? Like, I'm gonna be afraid either way. So it's like, what fear is greater?
Mm.
Is it the fear of being abandoned by people, or is it the fear of living like a half life and kind of slow playing like essentially like a life unfulfilled or a life unlived. Never live a life that I actually enjoy, or I never meet people that I actually truly care about on a deep level, and I just kind of keep myself perpetually small. For the longest time, the fear of being abandoned, I feel like, or the fear of not getting my needs met, or like being let down or rejected,
Hmm.
that was far greater than what I'm more coming to terms with of like the fear of having a life unlived, basically, of like if I don't form relationships, if I don't advocate for what I need, I'll never fully live a life that's actually meaningful. Putting that line in the sand and being like, this is what I want, this is what I believe in, this is what I need, these are the people that I want to be surrounded with, these are the things I want to do, this is how I want to spend my time, and actually taking agency and ownership of that versus, oh, I'm not gonna like try to rock the boat. I'm not gonna be like that bold or whatever because I don't want to catch any flack from people.
That is what it ends up being. Like there's a lot of it ends up being fear-based and yeah, like the fear of rejection and fear of abandonment. And it's like, yeah, like you hear those things where it's like, oh, this is hard, that's hard, pick your hard, so it's like, yeah, pick your fear. What is it? Be the isolationist because you're afraid of somebody rejecting you or abandoning you or living unfulfilled. That's gonna be the one. Which one's gonna win out? Yeah, I'd much rather like be fulfilled than not. Like just because one person says no doesn't mean everyone's gonna say no,
Yeah,
but it's like what if it's that one person that really matters that says no, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, my world's over, and really not. You've just put too much stock into either that person or not. But yeah, I do like that part about like, yeah, living a life unfulfilled. So
yeah. And that one's like sneakier, I feel like, because that moment of rejection, like how long does that really last? Like I don't know, like maybe it sits with you for a long time, but like I've been rejected or shot down many, many times, and honestly, I can't remember a lot of them. In the moment though, it's fucking terrifying.
yeah,
But afterwards, it's like, but then with a life unfulfilled, it's like that's the stuff that people think about like on their deathbed. Like, I wish I would have taken those chances. I wish I would have done those things. I wish I would have taken more risks. I wish I would have spent more time with people who mattered to me. Those are like the regrets that people have when they die. That they
yeah,
don't think, oh man, that one rejection was so bad. Like, I wish I didn't get rejected. It just happens, and a lot of times it like adds flavor and like in
like,
retrospect, like
yeah,
it's all perspective. The rejection is the worst in the moment, and leading up to it or around that it's really bad in that moment, and then it's like later nothing, but then
yeah.
like doing these things, and likewise like doing these things are scary, like asking for wants and needs in the moment, but then afterwards there's like a huge payoff at the end. Look back, you're like towards the end of your life or on your deathbed, and you're like, shit, like look at all those years, look at
I
all those regrets that I have.
Yeah, I think that's big because then it's the story that you tell yourself of what could have been, like where it's like then all of a sudden that becomes more than just like face the fear of being rejected or whatever. Like if I try,
Yeah,
right, then at least I have the concrete evidence of what happened and I can work through like if there's a regret, like say from how I treated a partner or how I treated my son or how I treated a friend that regret, I have concrete proof and I can work through it and I can probably make an amends towards it. If I don't do something, then I'm stuck with that torment. I could sit there and torture myself of like, oh man, I should have taken that chance. And this is like trying to like fantasize and create some story of what would have happened if you would have done it.
yeah,
That is more torturous than like, oh, I fucking did it and it didn't work out. That hurt somebody. That sucks. How can I repair it? How can I change moving forward?
totally. Yeah, because there's options. Like if you get abandoned, rejected, or shot down, you still have options. But if you've already burned out your life and you're just sitting at the end, you're like, shit, you're out of options. I don't think about that enough. Quick fear or perceived fear that usually wins out. Put the stuff into practice and to live a more intention life. I think it's about picking the fear of like, let myself be afraid of the real fear, which is like I just give up opportunities that I have a whole bunch of what ifs. What if I did this? I have a whole bunch of like what could have been situations. Like I have a whole room full of those instead of like those little rejections. Abandonment is like the biggest fear I think of most kids, or that's basically death. Abandonment equals death for a kid. But for an adult, you have tools to overcome abandonment. Let's say your partner leaves you or something, or a relationship ends. It's not like it's game over. Like you can only have one parent, like one set of parents. Like you just have one parent. There's just one. But like with a romantic relationship, or with like, I don't know, a business endeavor or a friendship or just about anything else, like there are options. It's graduating the fear into like getting out of the childhood fear of like, oh, I hope I don't get abandoned, into like the adult fear of like, what if my life has no meaning? And I do that because I'm afraid of getting abandoned. Did you have any kind of like closing thoughts or ideas on?
Yeah, so I think there was one last thing that came up to where it's needing to be seen as certain. We kind of touched on this, but it's like I always felt like I was being noble by not expressing what I needed or wanted. I did feel guilty if I did something that I want, then I was depriving someone else,
Mm,
which like it's not a zero sum, right? Like so
yeah,
it's like I like yeah, like maybe if it's financial, then it's like, oh, well, like, and if you're dealing with financial difficulties or something where it's like, well, if I'm spending money on myself, means I don't have enough for that. But I think now, like, I definitely am in a place where I realize that it's not zero sum to where it's like, yes, there's benefit to, making sure that your needs and wants are met, while still having it be beneficial to other people.
totally. Yeah, it's possible for it to be a win-win instead of a win-lose situation. Yeah, that is pretty much it. Do another one of these and deep dive into another issue. So
Sounds good.